Like many of us, I watched the Super Eagles game yesterday against Mozambique, and yeah, shout out to the Super Eagles. They're currently running riot in the Afcons at this point in time. It's the first time where I've watched a Super Eagles team, aside from the is it the '96 team that make me feel like yeah, these people really they could do the job, you know. Uh, But in as much as they've been doing so well and they did exceptionally well yesterday, putting 4 goals past the Mozambicans. That's correct. Yeah. There was a moment if you watch the game that I feel, in my opinion, marred the whole game and could be indicative of a deeper division in the Super Eagles, or maybe amongst players, or maybe I could say amongst two players, just by the actions of one player in that team. Um, and out of respect, I won't mention his name, but I'm taking nothing away from him. He's an exceptionally great player, but I still feel there are areas of his life or areas of his game off the pitch and on the pitch that he needs to work with. And these areas are in the areas of his emotions. Because I feel like if it gets to a place where your emotions are unregulated and these feelings and your frustrations and your disappointments uh, become emotional and irrational outbursts, especially towards a fellow player in the game, then you're speaking a louder language than what you're verbally speaking, because the world is watching, millions of people are watching, and you're out there publicly lambasting an equally great player. In fact, an African Player of the Year 2025, which you were not. You're publicly lambasting that player for whatever reason you feel is justified to you. My take on football is no player is indispensable. The framework of football is that you have 10 players, one goalkeeper on the pitch, and you have a ball, a referee, and your job is to try and put as many goals past your opposing side so you could walk away with the victory. Failure to do that then means that you've drawn the game or you've lost the game. There's no it's just literally set on stone that way. But for that to happen, every single player in that team has to function well. You have to function mentally, physically, emotionally well. And once a player starts to exhibit areas of emotionally being emotionally imbalanced, is not only destabilizing the team. It's, as I said, showing to the wider audience the division in the team. Then amongst the players, it's showing that we're not united. Amongst the players, it's showing resentment. Who does he think he is? Listen, guys, let me say this before I say the first one. And from a senior player in particular, where younger players look up to you, these are the last things that you should be exhibiting, exhibiting in, you know, a, a game, even let me even in a not even just in training, but in a national a game of this magnitude where it's not the World Cup, but it's the African Cup of Nations, for crying out loud. You need to be able to have regulated your emotions and know that you are part of the team. And I say this to people like, I play football, though I've not played to that level, but I've played football for decades and I've played to a decent level. I played semi-pro. I've played local games. I've played home, abroad, wherever I call home or abroad. I've played in all sectors, school, university games, all through the ranks. And I understand that there's a lot of pressure in football. There's a lot of passion that's exhibited in football. And I also understand that all players are not equal in football. And that's why some players are paid exceptionally more than other players. But regardless of the pay structure within the whole aspect of football, every single player on that pitch becomes valuable the minute they wear the badge and the jerseys for that team. And it's in uncalled for any player to disrespect any player who's wearing that team, whether by virtue of him thinking they didn't pass the ball to him, or he wants to get his hat trick, or he feels he's suffering from an over bloated ego or a sense of entitlement, or it's totally uncalled, unacceptable for any player of club, of national team, even in an amateur league. There's certain words I can't pronounce. Just you know, I say to some of my guys at football that, like, the minute a coach feels you necessary to field you, he has a part that he needs you to play in conjunction with the rest of the player he feels on that spot. And you don't have no right to come here and now tell the coach. Yes, by all means encourage, but don't go out and start lambasting or telling someone off like if you're the top, the coach of the team. If you were supposed to be the coach, you'd be on the bench, and that's what the coach gets paid for. The minute you do that, there's so much signals that begins to send to the players in the team and the wider audience that are watching you, fan base and everything as well. And especially for a player like this who's had antecedents with all these irrational outbursts in the past. I know he's had it with Finity George and his former club before he moved over to the new club. And I just feel it's a part of his game because it's all inclusive in the game. Your attitude, your actions, your talents, your skills, your emotional well-being, your physical conditioning, your mental state on and off the pitch, just because of the pressure that what it is. And when I say that, it easily allows me to pivot into how football is actually life. Football. If you take this whole framework of football, this whole uh, thing about football, how what players have to face on the pitch, having to practice, having to work hard, having to train, having to condition themselves, having to work as part of a team, having to listen, having to strategize how to to defeat their opponents, having done all of that, then sometimes get beaten, get abused. This is what life throws at us as people, as individuals, living on planet Earth. This is all the obstacles and all the stones that life will throw at you, whether it's in your workplace, your friendship, your family, your business, your religion. These are all the things that you would experience, be it individually, but these are things that you would experience as you try to move forward and, thrive or succeed or, achieve a desired goal. But do you then, because of all that life throws at you, begin to, go into a meltdown state of emotional outburst and unregulated emotions and fight everyone, abuse everyone, and curse everyone? No. You feel the emotions, and the right thing to do is feel the emotions, understand the emotions, think about the emotions, think about context, and move in a way that won't be detrimental to you, your family, your friends, and all the people who are around you, your teammates in this case. So yeah, the larger picture, the larger thing that I wanted to say is, like, whether it's football, whether it's real life, we need to regulate our emotions. We need to be in control of these emotions. These emotions, they're not self-governing or self-existence on their own. They are controlled and governed by the person who hosts them or who harbors them. So that means that if you have these emotions and these feelings, the same way they swell up in you is the same way you could take time, take a deep breath, like the Stoics will say, and think about the actions that you want to take in response to them. I think, again, like the Stoics said, it's not what happens to you. I think it was Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to what happens to you that matters. Again, scriptures also tell us that he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty who governs a city, and he who controls his spirit is even better or bigger than the one who just acts irrationally or who takes a city. Somewhere along those lines, but you can make sense of it. But eventually, the bottom line is he doesn't. We shouldn't act irrational. Let's take a moment to think, breathe, especially going ahead, into a new year is a good way to start thinking and saying to ourselves, okay, when I feel these emotions, what's the best way to react to it that it won't be detrimental to the people around us, or it won't harm, or I could walk away from this with a still dignified or in a still matured manner that people will think, okay, you acted responsibly. Because the person who he did it to, he could have, he controlled the person who had an emotional outburst couldn't at any time determine how the person who he was accusing or shouting at would respond. But that person decided to control, you know, his response. Still played on with the game. Still had a fantastic game at the end of the day. And at the end, even when commentaries were made, when he had to make some commentaries or interviews, I beg your pardon, was made, he still, put in a supportive word against this other player. So we can control these emotions if we choose to. We shouldn't feel we have an over bloated ego and we live a sense of entitlement and just feel that we're indispensable in any factor or any facet of life. Because once we think that, we begin to think we're technically thinking of our own misfortune, for lack of a better word. But yeah, until I speak to you again, keep crushing it.